All right. Hello, 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 and welcome to the newest episode of Borderline Podcast Disorder. How are you, Borderline Podcast Disorderians? Are you good? Did you have a good week? Did you have a good weekend? Are you looking forward to this week? I hope you are, because I was going to say that I'm looking forward to this week, but I really don't know. I have no idea. Anyway, as I'm recording this, is actually there's no result to the elections yet because it's pre-recorded. I will yeah, I will have to you'll find out in the next episode what's whatever has been happening or how I feel about stuff. Although I'm not a political guy, I don't think anyway, or I'm not yeah. Anyways, I'm done with the stomach tests and all that. Just waiting for the results. While I've been going through this, Pickle and Sarma have been going to the vet for the first time. They had their first vaccine, and yeah, don't know. They didn't seem too happy, or at least they just seemed very tired yesterday. But besides of that, I'm actually really excited about the episode that you're about to listen to, because Benjamin is one of my favorite comics in the London scene. I actually not he's one of my favorite comics. I met him in the London scene. I actually met him on my very like first weeks in London, and then we kind of haven't seen each other for ages, and then we've seen each other again, and every time I see him is just delightful. He's a lovely guy, and yeah, we just had a great conversation, and as we did a couple of times in the past as well, and I was just glad that this time we managed to record it, and you can listen to it, and yeah, I just think it was very entertaining. It was a good chat, and what else should I tell you from my end? Well, I'm hopefully going to be. I'm just waiting for a confirmation, going to do a show as a part of a fringe in East London, and yeah, we'll just wait and see how that goes when the date is being released. Although I know that most of the people listening to this are actually not UK based, so it doesn't really matter to you, does it? But I thought I'd tell you anyway, just to show that I do have gigs coming up. I've not been as busy throughout this like beginning of the summer, I guess, because of all the health stuff. But I feel like this is the least judgmental I've been with myself. Although again, I've done a lot of other work. So although I haven't been again out, and I couldn't go out and do the gigs. I've done a lot of admin work. I've done a lot of, as you can see it with the, 2 episodes a week. Um, as well. So that's taken some time. Um, I wasn't really happy with the sound quality actually last week from my the intro and the outro that I did. So I had to make sure that gets fixed, and I think I did it. But yeah, look, there are still things I'm being like judgmental about. Not again. The point was not severe, not as aggressively as I used to. I kind of get it. Things happen. Some things that I can't control, and not only that I can control, even the ones that I can control, I can only control to a certain extent. Or, which was a huge reminder in the last couple of weeks, is that sometimes you just have to, you know, you can only do so much at one time. So I think the whole again throwing up and feeling ill situation was much more important. So that was my priority. Making sure that I get to figure out what's going on and how I can fix myself. And so that's going in a good way. Again, the test I've done actually on Monday last week was horrendous. It was one of the worst things I've ever done. I had to wear a tube for a while, and it was just a nightmare. So I was glad I got done with it. and we're just building up from there. We're just gonna figure out what's next, and or I'm gonna be able to focus more on whatever I have on to do my to do list, and yeah, the putting up the hour again. It's not going to be an hour of me. I'll do a compilation. I'll get some people to some other comedians to perform with me, just because I don't have the hour. Gotta be very honest. I mean, I don't have anywhere near that. I think I have maybe 15 minutes that I'm really happy with, that I'm really proud of, and I think that's okay. Being self-awareness is very important, and sometimes it can be quite helpful. But yeah, that's been happening, and you know what, I'm going to leave you with the episode. I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to even see how this sounds like intro outro wise as well. I'll catch you later. Enjoy. A minute. Okay, cool. Yeah. So Ben, how's it going?
Hello, I'm well. I'm happy. I'm absolutely delighted to be here in your condominium.
Condominium.
Yeah, that's. I don't know what a condominium is, but
okay.
but it sounds like that's what impressive people should live in.
To live. Okay. Well, thank you for finding me impressive. But yeah, thank you for bringing the leotard and the wrecking ball with you.
No problem at all. Now I'm. Now I always turn up in quite an extreme form of fancy dress to any podcast recording, and just in my daily life, really. That's me.
Do you have to do you do props?
Oh, that's true. Actually, I've got a few prop gags on stage, and I found that the prop gags that I end up doing aren't necessarily the ones that go down the best, but they're just the ones that involve a prop that can most easily fit in my pocket, basically. So that's fine. Yeah. So all the props, all the big laughs that involve like taking a sideboard around with me, I had to drop them. But any little laughs I get from marbles in my pocket, that's what I hang on to.
Oh, I used to carry a bow tie for a bit that I was doing.
Whoa.
No, sorry, a tie, and I had like one of those clip-on ties, which I actually found really awkward because I was buying them online, and I was wondering if like people in like the Amazon warehouse things like I'm a huge pervert because an adult buying but like nothing else from a school uniform but the clip-on ties.
That's
and
good.
I generally I was scared. I remember at some point I thought, what if police is going to break my door in?
Your name is definitely going to be on a list somewhere. That is a suspicious, just like in Seven, Kevin Spacey in Seven, when you take out a flagged book, and that's what eventually did for him.
Well, yeah.
And obviously that was, it turns into a documentary. So I didn't intend to go hard on K-Space straight away. Anyway, we need to start with the last time that we were physically together in a room, and that was when you accidentally electrocuted yourself on stage.
Holy shit, that was the last time?
It was, which I think is I think it might be even a year ago now.
It was a year ago.
But it's fixed very firmly in my mind because I'd never seen someone electrocute themselves on stage before, and so I wondered, how was that?
Oh my God! You know what? Actually, that. I'm not starstruck. I'm struck because I'm usually the one who's asking the questions. That's one thing. No, but
I've never electrocuted myself on stage, so you can't ask me that question. Unfortunately, that's a shame.
But no, fair enough. So okay, because and also the second thing is it's related to the podcast.
Oh yeah.
Because I got electrocuted, just like you said, a year ago.
Wow.
I was doing a gig, and then I was doing Up the Creek. It's fine. The issue's been reported. We're not suing them or anything. But I was Up the Creek, and I have my little gag about like being from the north of Romania, and that's when I used to. And funnily enough, I've not done it since. I would play around with my hands and be like north of Romania, so I point up with a finger. As in like my index finger, trying to show the top of the map. And basically, because there was a live electricity sign on stage, and then obviously because I went with my finger up, the electricity in my body.
Yeah, you're a profoundly electrical man.
Well, and the electricity from the wall, they kind of like intertwined, and like my finger got like almost like it kind of like it went out of my willpower, and I went on the wall. Yeah. I got struck by the said lightning. And then all I remember is, because I remember at the time as well, I was trying not to swear on stage, and I was trying to, because even now sometimes I do odd, like, oh, fuck this, fuck that, whatever, you know. But again, not as no joke wise, but just like, oh, that's fucking stupid. Da, da, da. But anyway, at the time I was trying not to swear, and I remember the first thing I said was like, oh fuck, and I didn't see anything.
Interesting. Whoa.
I couldn't see anything. And then the lights went on. And I was like, because it's in basically for anyone listening that's not, either been at the blackout, because we, we don't have like only London listeners, but basically after 2 minutes on stage, there is a light that goes in and out to say that that's the time when people in the audience can basically vote you out in case they exactly, they can express themselves. So that light went on, so that switch went on and off. And then it goes off and then it goes back on, but in my head it was just I didn't kind of almost see it. I could hear people. I was stuttering, and all I could say was like, oh fuck.
And that fascinates me, because I think what I would feel in that situation is, oh no, I've just said a swear word. I haven't said a swear word yet on stage. This has really changed my persona on stage. And now I'm turning into like an American shock jock guy who's like, and before I've been a silly Billy. And I think because it felt like, because there was definitely a change in sort of temperature in your performance when post electrocution. I think that would happen to anyone. And but yeah, it's just fascinating. It got me thinking about like how when spontaneous things happen on stage, you have to respond to them sincerely, because you've got no time to do anything else. But sometimes that might jar with the persona you've been trying to build up, or the story that you were in the middle of. If you're telling a story about what a lovely guy you are, and you always help old ladies across the road, and then and then you electrocute yourself, like, fuck, I'm so fucking angry. It sort of jars with what you're talking about. So I was just fascinated by that, really. But yeah, just trying to bring it back to whatever your baseline was, you're happy with on stage.
No, and my heart was racing. Like I couldn't breathe. And then I remember, like, I got gonged off. I went off. I left the stage, and then I just picked up my jacket and I went outside. And I was like, I'm just gonna go home. And I went home. And then on the way on the DLR, I'm not proud, but I threw up.
Whoa.
Yeah, but then I thought, you know what? It's Thursday night. I don't want to go to A&E and waste my night in A&E. So I just went home. But then I got a notification on my watch saying that my heart rate has been higher than it should have been. So he picked up like the increase, anyway, the next day I'm at work, and then basically I'm talking with my colleagues. I have a part-time job where I do some like technical stuff, and basically I have to be like grounded for electrical repairs. Okay. And I couldn't get grounded, like, because basically we get tested by putting something on, like a strap basically to make us like grounded, and then you have to press a button, and then if that button beeps, then it means that there is still active electricity in you, so you're not safe to do the said repair. Okay. And then I kept on touching that button, and it would just like fucking beep the life out of me. And I was like, this is so odd. And then I realized, I was like, hang on a minute. Yesterday, I got electrocuted. And also, by this point, I couldn't make a fist.
Whoa.
Yeah, but I think because it was the left hand that got electrocuted.
You weren't able to make a fist. It was just a sort of a ball of energy formed instead, which you could send.
No, it's in like I would go like this far. I would go like almost to make the fist. But then if I force myself to, like, say if I wanted to punch someone, I couldn't turn it into like the power to like do it. Like I could do the movement, but then I couldn't cling it.
So for the listeners at home, it looks like Levy is clutching a newborn baby bird. Very gently, very sensitive.
Yeah.
But that's not a fighting fist. You're right. God almighty. But God bless you.
Yeah.
Levy, putting your body on the line for this
for comedy.
Yeah, for comedy. That's amazing.
Then I went basically, like, they sent me to they were like, oh, you need to go to a hospital. I went to a hospital, to A&E. I went in a posh part of London as well. It was like West London. It was somewhere near like Mayfair or something like that. I can't remember the area for sure. Marylebone, near Marylebone.
Marylebone, yeah.
Marylebone, yeah. So I went there. I went to that place, and then I got tested. And then this like had one of the most patronizing doctors, which is fair enough because she had the point. I electrocuted myself by touching a sign, but then she goes like at the end, she's like, you should have come here last night because like now it's too late because we needed to see straight away. And so she was like, look, if anything. Basically, if you start throwing up again or if your heart rate goes up again, come back in. But for now, you look fine. Yeah. And then at the end, she goes, and also try to stay away from touching live, like electricity. And I was like, like, I had enough, you know what I mean? Because I didn't, by the way, that night, I didn't sleep at all.
Whoa. Okay.
But then I thought it was because I have insomnia is sometimes happens with people with BPD. Yeah. So I thought, it must just be like my mental health that's keeping me up. But then it turns out that I didn't sleep for 2 days. I think.
Really?
Yeah. After that,
I do. I just feel I mean, what that sounds like is the origin story of a superhero, basically. So I feel like if you'd have played that 24 hours right, you could be fighting crime right now.
Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. I'm going after
local or international.
Local. I have like one of those Batman lights.
Oh,
and it only goes as far as like East London. So yeah, I keep it local.
Plenty of crime there. What's your insignia? What is the silhouette on your light that you project?
A light bulb.
A light bulb. That's perfect. Light man is coming to shed light on the situation.
And the reason why I was saying that it goes hand in hand like with the podcast is because I've seen a psychiatrist the week after because on that week when I went off work, again, not sleeping for like 2 days, feeling even more miserable. Again, it just happened at the end. And so basically, felt miserable, couldn't sleep. I had to see a psychiatrist anyway. And then the psychiatrist goes, you might have bipolar disorder. But the only thing is, and the reason why, basically, they thought it was bipolar is because I told them about the not sleeping. Yeah. But the only reason why I didn't sleep was because of the electrocution. So anyway, I did some like questionnaires and I did some things. But soon after that, I got diagnosed with BPD.
Winner. So fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good to get the gold medal on that one. And so that was all a year ago. That was quite recent. That's amazing because that's been a big part of your life and your journey, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I suppose that would have prompted the podcast stuff as well, really. Like that like that gives you a sort of a focus for the podcast.
Yeah, so I think the reason why the reason why I started doing the podcast is because it was about October now. I was doing DBT, which is the sort of therapy that you have to do to basically learn how to manage your emotions. Because apparently now there is a different name of borderline personality disorder, which is emotionally unstable personality disorder. Mm-hmm. So to learn how to be to stabilize your emotions, then you do something called DPD. And doing this DPD, I was getting burned out because one day I was in hospital. 5 days I was doing, I was still working full time at the time, and then trying to gig in the same time as well, and doing all these things. It was just a nightmare. So then I got burned out again, and I was but then I didn't want to stop comedy. I didn't want to, obviously, and I didn't want to stop my day job because that's how I make most of my living. So, but then also I felt when I started doing comedy, because obviously I have, and this is to a trigger warning, but I did have suicidal ideation for many times in the past, and even at that time it reoccurred. But basically, one of the main reasons why I started to do this is because I don't know if you know, but people with BPD have, I think it's about 27% of people diagnosed with BPD end up dying of suicide, or I don't know if this is the precise, but anyway, it's the highest number from any sort of mental health condition or disorder.
It's the most efficient
way, yes. So then I thought, I really want to do something. But then I realized if I try to put that into my joke, it's not really funny because, again, it's one of those things where I don't know how, in my head sounds funny, but it might sound funny because it's my experience, it happened to me. And then I'm like, how silly I was. But then I do realize that when I try to tell someone the story, it actually doesn't bring me the laugh which I would expect from a joke. So it's not really a joke. It's a story.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to basically make sure that I can still do comedy, which I love, but then I can also do some sort of like help out other, like some say, I feel uncomfortable saying activism because I'm not an activist, but like, you know what I mean, like this sort of, you know, I'm trying to do something for someone else. I'm trying to kind of like shed the light on something that's happening and something that's real. And then I realized comedy wasn't the outlet for it. It's a good platform for me to reach out audiences and, you know, to basically get like, I don't know, to like have like to get a reputation of some sort. But the stage, because I don't like comedians that are too political, not necessarily, but in the case of like trying to make statements while on stage, I feel like you obviously you're more than welcome to have, because I have my own views, which I very strongly believe in, but I don't think unless you do it, you turn it into a joke, then you shouldn't, or like to me, I don't want to use my set to have like a 2-minute lecture
I agree,
on mental health. So that's how the podcast came through in October, because I thought, you know, again, I do comedy, but I'm not getting what I want. I don't feel like I'm helping enough. I don't feel like I'm actually, you know, I find meaning. I don't find it. I find it meaningful for me because it helps me to cope with things. But I don't think that I bring anything to society.
Yeah. Oh no, that's definitely true. Yeah. We're not adding society in any way at all. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
No, I don't think. Again, laughter is wonderful. I think we are probably the most impressive and the most wonderful people in the world for doing comedy. Yeah. Like I think we should get all the grants that any kind of like medical research gets. Anyway, that's a different that's a different argument.
Yeah. When are the World Health Organization going to recognize more comedians operating at the front line? Just doing the stuff, which brings us to Patch Adams, of course, the much maligned Robin Williams film, where he does exactly that. I think sort of administering jokes as therapy, which works in real life, but probably just not as a narrative film starring Robin Williams. But yeah, it is bonkers, isn't it? I think it's interesting. I never want to waste people's time on stage, so I'm always wary of spending too much time saying what I actually think, setting up some information, like doing sort of taking up people's time in something that isn't making them laugh or directly on the way to making them laugh. And obviously some people can do it and do it really well, but I'm always wary of like you say, like spending 2 minutes explaining my relationship with my auntie and only having sort of a 5-second joke at the end of that. I think it's same thing with political stuff. I think it's a real art to try and gag up sincerity, basically.
But as well with that, and I don't know, I'm actually curious. You know, now I can ask you some questions. But like one of the questions is, because look, for example, in my situation where I feel like I can give you a backstory, but I want to give you, like, while I give you the backstory, it has to have some gags in it. Like I would tell you about like I would tell you about the relationship with my aunt, but I don't want to have 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes, especially because again, for anyone listening, you know, when you build up on a 5-minute set, then you do a 10-minute set. If you use 2 minutes on a 5-minute set to set up to basically to do the setup, that's almost half of your time. You know. So then anyway, all I'm saying is when I try to even like explain something, or like when I try to set it up, I still want to have some gags in that setup, so I can still give you something to still show you that that's a part of a set.
Definitely, yeah.
Do you is that something that you do, or how do you cope with that? How do you do when you're like, oh, this is really funny, but how do you make sure that people understand you? Why what you're saying it's funny, or like why what happened to you it's funny?
No, that's a good thought. I think that I just want to have a high gag rate and a high sort of a lot of ideas and quite and sort of quite dense sort of series of ideas. And what I'll end up doing is I'll do a story on stage, or do a bunch of gags on stage about a particular topic, and then the ones that go well, I'll sort of cherry pick them and sort of build and drop them into a different routine, usually, weirdly. So I'll come up with a grab bag of jokes that definitely work, that are definitely good, and I'll sort of take them as the fixed points of a routine and then build something totally different around those gags. So a gag might have come from me talking about my relationship with my auntie, but it might the thing that gets the laugh might be a one-liner about pasta. Great. And so what I'll end up doing is just creating a story around things that you find in the kitchen, which I will drop that one-liner in to, which came out of relationship with auntie, but is now just I love Ben Patterson's pasta gag. That's absolute classic, great. But I sort of try and parachute in the gags into. I just choose whatever form is most suitable to accommodate the gags that I already know is working, basically. So in that way, I sort of make a sort of a patchwork quilt of a set, which some people might argue leads to a slightly erratic and incoherent 20 minutes from me. Other people would say it's an absolutely fantastic magical mystery tour through the highs and lows of my personality. But yeah, it's I always just try and sort of I trust the laughs, basically. Whatever thing is getting the laugh, I will retain that bit of information, and I'll be very happy to ditch whatever was around that, because as we were saying, I'm not a big I don't have a big sort of political point to get across or something. I'm not necessarily trying to change people's minds on any bigger sort of world topics. Therefore, I'm perfectly happy to just be a song and dance man and just say a silly thing which definitely gets a laugh. And so whatever frame I need to put around that is what I'll do. Oh, I'm a fireman, and so I if I've got 5 good gags about being a fireman, and it's just so that's where I feel most comfortable. I think I'm not particularly attached to the actual topics. I'm just interested in sort of the gags, really. But equally, I don't want to completely. Equally, I don't want to. It's hard just being a one-liner merchant, basically, and it's hard to have to rebuild a context every line. So I try to have some sort of a thread connecting stuff. Yeah, going from topic to topic or gag to gag.
How did you get into comedy in the first place?
Oh, well, it was it's quite I suppose absolutely everyone's experience is a bit funny and a bit odd, I suppose. So mine was funny and odd in this way. So I ran comedy gigs. So I did the door at comedy gigs.
Oh,
for quite a few years in London, and that was always nice. And always enjoyed that. Loved comedy all my life. So specifically stand up all my life, and I've always been very organised. So doing the door at a comedy gig was a very good fit for me. And then one day I was running a show outside the box, and we were just testing the mic, and the guy that runs it, wonderful man called Matt Brown, was he said, "Oh, go and test the mic." And so I went up to the mic and did a couple of Simon Munnery jokes. Actually, I'm a big Simon Munnery fan, so I just did a couple of jokes into it, and he said, "Oh yeah, bit more." And so just for fun, I just went into a couple of jokes that I had written. I just had in my back pocket, and he laughed and he said, "Oh, are they you?" And I said, "Yeah, that's me." Yeah, and he said, "Oh, you should come and do 5 minutes at da." And so that's what I did, and that sort of got me going, basically. Yeah, so it was it was one. Were it not for that one particular sound check, the world would still be deprived of the broadcast genius of Benjamin Patterson. But yeah. So that was fun. Yeah, so it went from running shows to being on stage, really. And that's nice. And I still run shows now, but I balance it with performing as well. And I enjoy both of those things.
When did you start doing it?
So standing up probably only a bit before lockdown. So 20.
No
so
way.
2020, something like that.
I always thought you've done it for much longer.
That's just,
in a respectful way, in the sense of
that.
Again goes back to like your craft.
Yeah.
I always thought you.
Well, it's funny, because I think that I mean that was definitely my first time on stage. I'd been writing stuff for a long time, and like I say, I've been taking it seriously.
Yeah.
It's not like I woke up one day and I was like, "Oh, there's nothing on TV. I think I'll be a stand-up comedian now." Like, it was really like the stand-up's been one of the main things. Yeah, one of my main focuses, just as a punter, for years and years and years and years. And I'd been sort of stockpiling little jokes here and there, little ideas for a long time. And so there's definitely an amount of fermentation that's been going on in my brain, which might be what you're seeing, maybe arguably, I felt like I came to the stage with some pretty particular ideas about what I wanted to do, what's hot and what's not, and so I did feel like I sort of didn't want to waste too much time, and I wanted to be sort of as efficient as possible, sort of from out the gate, I suppose. But yes, that's very, very sweet of you to say that. It looks like I've been going for a long time, but obviously that does mean that I should be playing much bigger venues and much more successful by now.
No, that's not. I also, like, one of the things I was going to mention is that I find fascinating your commitment to comedy. No, like genuinely, because I know, like, I remember when, like, again, the way you treat comedy, which is wonderful, because I'd like to think, to an extent, I also see it as a, because obviously, like, the dream is for me to have it as a job, as a full-time, career, like as a more of a career. But then, you don't really like to see this sort of commitment. And like I've seen, because what I found like fascinating, like gigging with you, and again, we haven't seen each other in ages, but I remember at the time, and now as you were talking about, like, not trying to waste people's time, or like, having all these things, like, or having this sort of order in your head and liking things in order. I also noticed that even when you're watching comedy, you pay attention. To the extent where you're like, that's good, that's not, that needs work, that's too easy, that's because that's actually, I just realized now, that's something that I felt like I connected with you on, because I remember we were watching other people being on stage, and you'd go like, again, it's not to say those people, because again, some of them are brilliant comedians, but it's more of a, like, seeing that gag as in, like, this is like a job task where you go like, has the task been completed, or does it, like, is it work in progress? And like seeing your face, like analyzing that, and I was like, because I do that sometimes. I mean, sometimes I listen to someone and I'm like, oh, interesting. And then you do that and you treat that as, again, this sort of commitment. And you're saying you're an organized person. When did you like? How did that start? How did that happen? Were you always like this?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I've always had an analytical mind. I've always cared about. I don't spend much time doing things that I don't care about, basically. And so I'm passionate. I only know about two things. That's comedy and rock and roll music, basically. And so I'm really focused on those things, and it's really momentous. It's really important to me that when someone does those things, they do them well, because you don't need to do them. You you'll definitely, when anything in the arts, they're not essential. It's not like being a mechanic, being a doctor. Like, we need more okay mechanics and more okay doctors. We can benefit from them, but we don't need any more okay comedians. We don't need any more okay film directors. And so it's always I've always just been quite particular with my taste in comedy, and I suppose it's just a natural thing that I'll have a natural analytic mind. I can't bench press very much, but I can analyze the spit out of something, and and I definitely try and so therefore I definitely apply that same thing to my own work. I sort of think, if I basically try to sort of see myself. I'm a very gifted audience member, and when I'm appraising my own work, I'm thinking, would I be bored at this point if I spent too much time on this? Is this a bit like a joke I heard last week, or so I'm just trying to keep people interested, and I'm trying to sort of satisfy myself, because I think, what would I be doing in a crowd? And you're absolutely right that I think the word that you were looking for earlier is judgmental. I'm a very judgmental man, because that doesn't paint the best picture of me, just sitting at the back of the comedy club, sort of sniffily turning my nose up at uninspirational work. But ironically, that is what I do, so it's absolutely legitimate. It's just, I just feel like it really counts. It's really momentous. It's really, you can be excellent at this. You can get better and better and better. And it's sort of self-evident when you do a line that's okay, or when you tell a story that's okay. It's obvious from the reaction of the crowd, that it's only okay and not fantastic. There's obviously more, or like more juice left in an idea, or there's obviously a higher pitch that you can take this laughter to, or you can take this idea to. And so, I'm just interested to focus moment by moment on what's going on stage. I suppose that's what I'm trying to say. Like, what you would have noticed is that there's, even if like the story as a whole really really works, there'll be particular beats which just sound a bit of a sort of a duff tone, or that's an extraneous line, or that's a confusing bit of information. Why have you dropped that in? And and it's an absolute joy to sit next to someone else who feels that way, and just just to have a little sentence to decide like 5 minutes ago he said he was single, but now he's just mentioned his wife in the chat. We go, that's stupid. And and I suppose I just like, because I care about it, I couldn't help but be really really focused on people's work there on stage. And you are right, I really do pay attention. Like, so from running shows especially, like I listen to everyone. Like, but I'll usually try and if the sight line's right, I'll watch, or I'll definitely listen to everything. I will not be scrolling on Instagram in the toilet for the first 18 minutes and just pop back for the last two. I'm always interested to hear what's on someone's mind, hear if they've changed from the last time that I've seen them, how the audience respond to their dirty joke rather than the last act's dirty joke, because they really liked that one, but they didn't like it when you said a dirty joke. Oh, that's interesting. And it's all just information. I'm just really interested to process that. And now particularly, obviously, since I stand up myself, so it's sort of all grist to the mill. It's important information to me to sort of to feed back into how I do my best to try and make people laugh. It's all helpful, but even back in the day when I didn't have any skin in the game, it was just it is just fascinating, and it's particularly fascinating because the feedback is so instant. Just because a laugh is audible, you can just see that worked, that didn't work, and one of the most fascinating things is you lost them there. Oh, it was the use of that word. You were kidding for 15 minutes, and then you said Beirut, and if you'd have just said Somalia, it would have been funnier because that's a funnier sounding word, or something, or it has different associations. It's really fascinating that you can really pinpoint the moment that things change gear. When really really good or really really bad, and that's fascinating. And you can only learn that by paying attention, I suppose. But yes, it's interesting. But I am judgmental. Yeah, I'm judgmental.
That's so fascinating, because I'm here and I'm listening, and I was like almost like my jaw was like wide open. I was like, what? Because it sounds again very knowledgeable, and it's interesting to actually see that, because you always hear this thing where like, oh, if you think that you can do it, why don't you go on stage? And then when you're actually someone who's been around for a while, like I said, he's seen loads of shows. And one of the things that you said, and I agree with, and I think it's a wonderful way of even watching comedy is to appreciate the jokes in a certain order, where you were saying that, okay, so I paid attention to you, you said you're single, now you have a partner.
Yes.
But also when, you listen to someone, you're like, oh, okay, you got a laughter there, but now you're not getting this laugh. And now that's where you lost them. Because sometimes you do, obviously, and I think, which I think when you try new material, you see that you try a bit and it doesn't work, and then you're like, oh no, they're not going to trust me now for the remainder of the time. And then, you're trying to like, no, come on, look, I'll show you, I have some more, but it's too late.
Yeah.
While if you actually, like, if as an audience member, you'd be, and it's not to say that there is a right or wrong way to be an audience member. Everyone that has, does as they feel like. But I do see it when you're a comedian and you're thinking, oh my God, that's it. Like, now doesn't matter what I say next.
The axle's fallen off the car, and I'm not in control anymore. For the next 3 minutes, this is going to turn into a demolition derby or something. Yeah.
And then it's interesting because you see that you can see the person, where like the stumbling starts, or where those like things come up, and you're like, that's what it is. And then how much of your own sets do you actually watch your sets back, or do you record it? How do you analyze what you do?
So I tape everything. Always tape everything I've ever done. The slightly funny answer is I used to record everything on video, but then I ran out of storage on the phone that I was using, and so then and only then did I start recording on voice notes. And so I've got like my first 20 gigs in perfect 5.1 surround sound, 4K, brilliant, and they're rubbish. And then the next 50 gigs, which are much, much better, I've only got on audio file. But yeah, I tape everything, and I always listen back to it, and I'm always just attentive to how different, obviously, that's my job to attentive to how different jokes land and stuff, but particularly like what order they're in and how. I suppose one of the most fascinating things from coming through every gig is to see which gags are totally durable and just get a laugh every time, even if I'm not going well. Everything picked up around that one.
Interesting.
And there's something really interesting about the stats don't lie. That you see there are certain gags which might not be your favourite gags or might not even be your best gags. That's one of the most fascinating things. It's not the 10 out of 10s that stay the same. Sometimes it's just like the 7.5 out of 10s. Oh, it always gets 7.5 out of 10. Even though my only the next biggest laugh was a 4 out of 10, that was back up to a 7.5 out of 10. Isn't that interesting and weird? Aren't human beings peculiar? And so I'll always tape everything. And I'll usually do it in a sort of a bunch. Like say maybe if I've had maybe 2 weeks and I've had maybe 7 gigs or something, I'll sort of listen to them all in a batch and see, what's on my mind at the moment? What do I sound like? Do I sound grumpy, or do I sound happy, or do I sound whatever? And is there particular bits of material that really sit well in my voice at this particular time, or are there obviously are there any spontaneous things that I happen to say on stage that once that actually I need to say that every time because that's just a nicer turn of phrase, or that's a nicer connection between 2 bits of material or something. And I really like crunching the numbers. I'm an analysis guy, and so I just like listening back, and I'll listen back to a bunch all at once and maybe take notes. I'll usually take notes like, be funnier in minute 7 because you have lost them, or something like that.
Seriously.
I won't write that sentence because that would be the work of a madman. But it's absolutely like, in that joke about glasses, make sure you say bifocals, not varifocals, or something. There'll be sort of little tweaks that I'll make just depending on what, and again, just what sounds right to my ear, I suppose, as well. It's like you can't really hear, or I can't really hear myself on stage. I can't, like people talk about writing on stage and stuff, and I don't really know what they're talking about because I can't process things while I'm on stage. It's only once I've got off and I've listened to the taping that I know how it's gone. Even like it's just not. It's a funny feeling, but I can come off thinking it's gone great and then listen back and it hasn't, and I can come off thinking it's gone bad and listen back and it's good.
Gone well.
And it's confused. Yeah, there's something about the I suppose maybe the analytical part of my brain isn't turned on stage. And I can only, and it's only once I listen back that I can operate.
But then, how do you feel? Because it sounds like this is a lot of preparation that's being put on. And then, how do you feel if, say, something doesn't go to plan, or say, I don't know, you get an interruption of some sort, whether it's heckling, whether something sometimes goes wrong with the mic, they do like a weird noise or whatever. How do you? And again, I'm not looking at it like the comedy. It's more like even like an emotional answer. Like, what's going on in your head at the time? And you're like, oh, shit, I lost my train of thought. Or do you lose your train of thought? Or how do you feel like, oh, I'm losing control? What's your reaction to that?
Well, exactly. I've learned to really like that now, actually, because I'm aware. Basically, I suppose my feeling is I do the preparation so I can ignore it, like any elite athlete. And it means that. So there's in practical terms. So 2 things I'll do 2 things if something spontaneous happens that I'm not expecting, and that might be a gag going really badly, or someone falling over, or someone starting a fight, or something. It will be obviously just respond to that thing. You can't ignore it. You've got to respond to the thing. Like when you electrocute yourself on stage, you've got to mention that fact. And also the other just practical thing I've done in terms of preparation is I've got a few things that I like doing, which are just spontaneous, silly, sort of more physical, high-energy things that I'll just drop in randomly at that time. So if I lose my thread, there's a couple of just nice little set pieces that I'll just do, and I'll be able to do. If you woke me up from a coma, I'd just be able to sort of deliver it.
No way.
And it means that, and that just gives me sort of thinking time to think of what story I'm going to tell next, or where I was in the set or whatever. Because I do, again, just as an audience member, I like to see a balance between preparation and spontaneity, basically.
Yeah.
So it's really nice hearing 20 minutes of banging one-liners, and it's really nice seeing someone just conjure up something from absolutely nothing. And it's particularly nice to see those 2 things balanced, and that's sort of what I'm having a go at doing, I suppose, about being as well prepared as possible to deliver a flipping banging set of 20 minutes, but being ready to do something silly and spontaneous and respond to and talk talk to the audience or just respond to the fire alarm going off or whatever, but it's all part of how I prepare to make myself to make sure I'm in the best position in that moment when something spontaneous happens to be able to sort of deal with it, and again, and I think all of that is just about calming me down. So I just know that if I want to go in sort of forewarned is forearmed. I want to go in knowing, if something weird happens, if the lights explode now, I'll be able to deal with that because I know the first thing I'll do is reach into my quiver of silly arrows and deploy one of those to just sort of keep the momentum going, sort of keep the show on the road, I don't know. That might even sound too premeditated. I don't know, but it's nice. It's just helpful to me to be able to go on stage and feel like I'm equipped to deal with whatever happens.
And I think that as a comedy, or at least like one of the ways to look at it is that you're always trying to, or at least I'm always trying to, or not always. Yeah, I'm always trying to, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. To almost show it as if it's not premeditated, like even the punchline or like the joke that I'm saying or whatever it's happening. You need to have a balance where you're like, there is actually so many hours or like so many attempts of trying to make this better, but yet to you it might look like something that I just came up with on the spot.
Yeah, just cast off.
So
exactly.
It's just so interesting to kind of see how you draw the line, I suppose, or like how you.
Yeah, exactly, and I think specifically for my stuff, I think it's an interesting line to walk because a lot of my stuff is sort of punny and very written. It sounds like you haven't accidentally made that play on words like that. That's the pun you meant to do on the bus when you're coming here, and so I'm quite often at pains to try and inject some spontaneity into my stuff to avoid it seeming too. Sort of bloodless and written and prepared, and so I really like doing sort of bigger, sillier, sort of more theatrical things as well. It's really nice.
What was your so before comedy comedy became your I guess again like before, because you were saying it was rock and roll and comedy, two things that you're passionate about. What did you do? What was your outlet, I guess, before this?
Funny quiz team names. So my outlet basically my only creative outlet was once a week or maybe twice a week if it was a big one, thinking of a funny name for the quiz that I would do that week to call our team, and that was basically my main creative outlet for about 10 years.
Oh my god.
Sorry, Lev, you probably get a lot of people giving that answer to that question. Sorry, that's yet another quizaholic.
So you do really? You do so many quizzes?
Yeah, I used to be a quiz guy. I'm still a quiz guy. I like quiz a lot, and I just think silly quiz team names was. It's a silly, funny answer, isn't it? But it is the closest thing in terms of it aped the style of generating material exactly, in that I would think of a funny word. I think, that's a funny word, or that's a funny form, or that's a funny phrase. I wonder if you could put that into something that you call a joke, or in this case, something you'd call a funny quiz team. And so I just think about that phrase and think, just like any sort of one-liner, sort of pun slinger sort of act does. Just think about that phrase and think, what would be a funny sort of angle to take on that, or what would be a funny thing to contrast it with in a sentence, and then I'll just think of silly sentences to drop that in, and then I'd write them down on my phone, and then I would turn up at the quiz that night and say, Darren, what do you think of these 8 quiz team names? And he'd laugh at 3 and not laugh at 5. But, right, let's pick from those 3. And so it's funny. It really was exactly the same, exactly the same structure as generating material, but it was just for making one man laugh with one line, which would then become a quiz team name and then broadcast to, to be fair, an audience of maybe 20 people in a pub. So, a gig's a gig. And sometimes if we'd win, I'd feel like I was getting paid to do professional stand-up comedy because I got some money for a funny team there. But yes, I hadn't actually thought. Yeah, but that is pretty much that's the closest to right, and it's hilarious that writing style. It's genuinely the same writing style I've got now.
I mean, I was going. Yeah, because as you were saying it, I was like, oh shit, yeah, because it's a play word, and also makes sense on. When you were talking about how like you don't want to waste people's time, or like you don't want to waste your time, you want to make sure that like gag after gag after gag, where because I'm more of a storyteller, so again in my story I try to have like some hooks where I still make it funny while I build it up, and then there's a punchline. Then also like I even think with my style is like the punchline sometimes are not even that strong because it's kind of like that's the end of the story and then I'm just moving on to another story. What I'm actually trying to work on to make you draw to make you drew in, it's not the ultimate punchline, but it's the story itself.
Yes, exactly.
While to you it sounds more like, again, this is the start, this is the end, we're going there. And with the pub quiz names, and also like I would have never thought of it, but then after you mentioned it now, I can see it. I can see you like, because I was even thinking like, a fantasy league. Fantasy.
It's the same thing as that. I've never gone deep into like fantasy football stuff or anything like that. But yeah, you're right. Those team names are. It's just I could read them all day. Like it's just funny. Yeah, just give me 100 puns around United, Rovers, Town, City, like that's fun to me.
Talking about United, Rovers, where which part of London? You're from London, right?
I'm not a London boy, so I'm from Tunbridge in Kent. I'm the mayor of Tunbridge. So I'm so Kent. So it's like so probably 50-minute train ride out south.
Oh, I know Tunbridge.
It's a gorgeous town.
Wait, you say you're the mayor?
Yeah, I'm the mayor of Tunbridge. Yeah.
You're being serious?
No, that's an honorary title that I bestowed upon myself.
Oh my God. I was like, Mr. Mayor, I'm so sorry.
God, it's just a side. But yeah, I'm very, very proud of that town. I think it's a beautiful town, and I've been there most of my life. And so obviously all my gigs and all of my life is in London, really. And just like anyone that lives in the commuter belt, you just get sucked into London for all your fun and games. But yeah, I'm a Tunbridge boy, born and bred, and yes, and very, very happy to be so. So yeah, it means I suppose I do a lot of work on the train. Like quite often I suppose like anyway, it's the same thing with the tube, isn't it? Or the metro for our Parisian listeners. But yeah, so quite often I'll just spend 50 minutes on the train, sort of thinking, so what am I saying tonight then, and what would be a way of improving that joke, or like, I'm going to this particular gig, so what do you think they'll like? Oh, what did they like last time? And so usually I use that time. Yeah, I usually use that time to sort of prepare for.
How do you remember all this?
Well, that's a good question. I think I've always had a fairly good memory, and that's what I think that's part of the challenge of it. Actually, I almost think coming up with funny things is the less hard thing. I think the more hard thing is remembering them in a coherent way and being able to deliver them in a way that ensures that people laugh. And I think that there's the element of storytelling that comes in that I try and attach it. I try and sort of link gags together and make it so that quite often what I'll actually do is I'll remember gags rather than remembering them as, like, say a gag is 2 sentences. I won't remember the joke as those 2 sentences. I'll remember the joke in my brain, like when I reach into my brain to pick out the file labeled that joke, it will not be those 2 sentences. It will be like the final word of the preceding gag, and then those 2 sentences, and then the next word of the next gag. Oh. So I'll try and lock sort of the last word of the preceding gag into the first word of the next thing, because I don't usually stick on one topic for a very long time. I don't usually tell sort of stories particularly. Yeah. And so quite often there'll be a word trigger which is just in my mind from sort of from doing it enough and hammering it into my brain. And so obviously I'll say that and that and that, and then this comes back to the thing of trying to react spontaneously and having those sort of little set pieces from time to time. I'll have a little suite of gags for like 2 minutes or whatever, and then I'll come to a spot where there's not an obvious next gag just because of the way I've written it. It's just that comes to a little sort of pause, and at the pause quite often, just to keep myself entertained and trying to keep the audience involved, I'll do a bigger, more theatrical, sort of louder bit,
Okay.
keep things ticking over. And obviously, just the obvious thing of breaking up the monotony of one line is a bit like I'm always wary of sort of punching people on the same bruise again and again. Like you want to alternate the style and the tone and the content a bit. I think to keep people interested.
Interesting you say that, because I sometimes I see some people have this idea of like actually keeping like hitting the same bruise, because they're like, it's already there. You kind of like, you just go with it. You just like
I agree.
try to no, again, because not to say that it's one or the other, but it's more of a, because you hear people like, oh, if you found in there, they find, like, for example, I think that there was a bit about like Bill Burr, like, oh, they love bread, say stuff about bread, and then you kind of like say stuff about bread until you run out of bread stuff to say. But then it's interesting to see where you're like, no, actually you had enough of this, let's move on to like the next topic.
Yeah,
and it just sounds fascinating, because that's actually like more, I think, sounds more like risk taking in the idea of like, oh, okay, but I guess it's risk taking the other way as well, because you're like, okay, then what if the audience goes like, nah, that's too much.
You're holding your finger over the flame for long, just with one topic, exactly. I just try and be the sort of act that I'd like to see from the audience, basically, and I just get bored of acts quite often, basically. Like if they've stuck on one topic for 10 minutes. That needs to be the most interesting topic in the universe. Otherwise, I just think that obviously it'll be victim to a sort of law of diminishing returns, and I'm always more interested to have a tapas thing. But give me 3-minute stories rather than 1 10-minute story. That just as a punter, that's what I'm interested in, and so I'm always every day of the week, I would rather someone say after a gig, "Oh, I like your gag about sweeties. I'd have liked to have heard more about that," rather than saying, "Yeah, you talked about sweeties for quite a while, didn't you? You really like them, don't you?" Like, yes, I do. Yes, sorry for wasting your time with the last 5 minutes on them. So I just try and just keep myself interested, really, and sort of to hop around from topic to topic a bit. But you're right. I think there's a risk reward thing, isn't there? I think it is frustrating to feel that the audience are really on board with a particular thing, and like you say, just keep on talking about bread. Yeah, so sometimes that the correct answer is just to riff, is just to expand on that idea in a way that you never have before and haven't written before, and just explain more of your ideas about that. But other times you can be stuck in what is a 7-minute story or 2 minutes in, and they're really not buying the central premise, and you think, oh, I'm sort of shackled to this story now, and I'm going down with a ship, And so there's sort of pros and cons to both ways, definitely. But I just want to do what I want to hear when I'm a punter, and what I want to hear when I'm a punter is lots of different ideas, and just sort of a quick turnover, and acts that are unpredictable, basically.
Were you always were you always like a gag
weird,
sort of like weird? Yeah. Were you always like a gag writer? Were you always like, like when did you start to see, like, were you like the kind of like kid in school who would like see a funny word in a book and you'd be like, this is funny, and,
yeah. You've been reading my diary.
Yes, actually.
I think.
Let's open it.
Yeah. I think I've definitely been one of the people that you describe. But like if you ask people to describe me, they use the word funny usually. Before they'd say reliable or rich or whatever. Oh, funny. Yeah. Funny is one of the things. And definitely since school. Definitely. I think like most comics, I'd definitely be towards the funnier end of things rather than towards the more serious end of things. And I suppose even from really young, just short, snappy jokes have appealed to me. Having said that, it's not like you get many 10-year-olds like demanding like a long form Richard Pryor sort of autobiographical, 25-minute tale of woe. When I'm funny in real life, I'm usually funny in a short, sharp way, and that's what I like doing on stage. And that's sort of always been my style on stage, I think. But I think it's a fascinating thing that I'm ceaselessly fascinated by the asymmetry between what you can make your friends laugh with off stage and what's funny on stage. That I think it's fascinating that sometimes you can tell a story off stage and it's the funniest thing that you've ever done, and you can tell the same story on stage, and it doesn't get anything. And sometimes there'll be a gag, a silly one-liner maybe that you'll do on stage that kills every time, and you can tell it, and you can draw even, and I'm not immune to this, drop it in like it's ordinary conversation to one of your friends just to see how they respond, and it just doesn't get anything at all. And I just find that absolutely fascinating that it's not a fundamental, it's not an essential property of that story or that gag or that pun or whatever that human beings like it. It's human beings in that particular context really, really go for it. And that's always fascinating. So there's a lot of things, like, because I've tried to do more story things on stage, but it just doesn't tend to work really. It's I'm just a sort of a short snappy gag man usually.
You know what I found actually I was thinking about when you were saying about, you have a bit and then you're like, oh, I need to put it in a random conversation. Yeah. And I don't know if it's happening to you, but it happens to me. And for example, I'd have this like funny idea in my head, and then I'm like, oh, this is good, and I'm like, oh, how do I basically I would plot.
Oh, wow.
On like how to basically start a conversation.
Amazing.
Where then I can use the said idea.
William, have you ever been to IKEA? Yeah, well, actually, it's funny you should mention IKEA. It's because the only thing the Malm is a really, wow, that's amazing. That's really funny.
And I just realized now, because it's happened, sadly, it's happened yesterday,
right.
where I was trying, I wrote this idea down, which now I can't remember, but it's written down. And then I thought, oh, I'm just going to try it on my partner.
Yeah.
And I had to then, I can't remember what the idea was about. I think it was something to do with my dad. Yeah. And I was like, oh, fuck, how do I bring him in the conversation now? So then, and then I somehow managed to speak with Irene about something. Irene, my partner. Yeah. I managed to speak with her about something, and I was like, okay, now is the time. And I dropped the line. Yeah. And she doesn't laugh. And I genuinely felt like I was offended.
Yeah. What on earth? I spent 20 minutes of conversation. I had an hour build-up. I've got spreadsheets documenting how I'm going to introduce this line. That's really funny.
And basically, I was wondering now for you, because I just realized that happened yesterday, but the amount of times this happened in my life, where like I would try a bit and I was like, oh, they're gonna think this is so witty. They're gonna think this is the funniest thing they've ever heard. They didn't expect it. And then they don't laugh. Is that like if that ever happened to you? What was your first thought? Because to me, I remember I would stop friendships for it. I would be like, we're done.
I turn to violence. I turn to violence. That's what I do. I don't know why you can't appreciate me. It's funny. I think, but do you know what my actual answer is? I take the response of the friend or the bus conductor or whoever I'm doing it to. Identically to how I take the response of an audience, which is, okay, the fact of the matter is, that's not funny then. Okay, geez, like, I still think it's great and loved it, and I'll still keep it in my mind as a finely polished jewel of a fun thing that I will, keep myself warm with on those long winter nights. But in terms of the public, this isn't worth saying. This isn't interesting. And obviously sometimes you can tweak something and improve something, and in a different context, something can surprise you by turning from not particularly funny to quite funny. Isn't that exciting? But basically, I'm happy to be led by the market forces of
interesting.
Those 4 people that heard that story that I thought was great didn't think it was great, right? That's the case then.
Where do you draw the line in regards to, because sometimes you have a bit and you're like, this is funny, why aren't people laughing? And you trust that bit and you just work on like where do you draw the line where you're like, okay, cool, he's not getting what I want, I'm done with this?
I think I'm relatively ruthless with it in that, like, even if I love it, the short answer is if it's got nothing twice, I'll drop it. If it's got not enough 3 times, I'll drop it. And obviously I'll try and I'll probably do it sort of the same time, the same way twice, and then I'll certainly tweak it for the third time and just swap it around, or use a different celebrity to make the point or whatever. But I think there's all of my jokes are my babies, and I love them all. But some of those babies are not going to go to university. Some of them just... It's like, I really do... Like, I don't bother saying something on stage unless I think it's good and funny and worth saying. And I'd apply that to 100% of things I've ever said on stage. but only 40% of the things I've ever said on stage have got a good response from lots of people and are worth saying again. And so I'm sort of egoless like about that. I don't get too attached to particular ideas or particular gags if they're just not working.
Wow.
I mean, because I've got no shortage of material, no shortage of stuff, and so I'll just move on to the next thing usually. There's a couple of, there's a little, just as an example, like there's probably 3 or 4 things in my life that have made me laugh like more than anything else in the world, and I've tried most of them on stage, and some of them have worked and some of them haven't, right? And I'll give an example of one of the. So this wasn't my joke. I used this as an example, like almost like a breathalyzer test on stage to see if this group of people had the same sense of humour as I did. That this was a story from many, many, many years ago that a member of someone in a Formula One pit crew had died because a tyre had spun loose from a car and it had hit him in the pit lane at 70 miles an hour and killed him straight away. And my mate said, just went, "What was he doing running at 70 miles an hour?" Which at the time, and I still think now, really, I think that might be the funniest thing I've ever heard, right? And so I thought, oh, well, we, as a comedian, our job is to harvest our own private lives and experiences for other people's pleasure. And so I thought, oh, it'll be interesting. So I think that's like my favourite thing that I've heard in real life. I haven't heard that gag before. I think that's an original gag. I think that's interesting. I'll say that on stage and see if people agree. And I think I did it at least twice, maybe 3 times, and just like, no, not really, don't get it, Ben, no, whatever. I prefer that knob gag you did yesterday that you thought of on the bus. Like, and it's that's just so interesting, isn't it? It's interesting that my taste can diverge from the taste of the general public so much. It's interesting that quite often I'm good at finding things that people will be into because I'm a relatively successful comedian that makes people laugh a lot. But it's interesting that there's big exceptions to that, and that even right at the top table, even at the thing, particular gags that I think of as like, comedy royalty gags, just don't move everyone, collectively at the same time. But anyway, sorry, that was a long riff off the back of
No, it was wonderful.
How do I stick? Well, I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best. Just about sticking with how long do you stick with an idea and stuff. And there's not too many ideas that I stick with just because I love them so much. There's 1 or 2, again, sort of theatrical act-out bits that I'm trying to perfect, sort of more clowny stuff, just physical stuff of like where I do a stupid thing with the mic stand, or I do a stupid thing with like standing on different bits of the stage or something that just need to be done sort of 10 times to find the beats of them, because they're an unpredictable sort of more theatrical sort of set piece. But with anything wordy, I'll just think of the most efficient way of putting that silly word or that silly pun into a sentence. I'll deliver that on stage a couple of times, and if it goes quite well, I'll try and make it go better. If it gets nothing at all, I'll just drop it and move on to the next idea. And like, what's the longest you've stuck with an idea for? Is there still something from 5 years ago that you're trying to unlock or anything? Is there like a?
No, I think. Interesting. Actually, because I ask you while I don't have no idea. No, but I'm asking you. However, yes. How long do I stuck with something? It depends. I think I do get upset if like, this is brilliant. Why is it not working? Yeah. But I don't stick by it for too long.
Sure. Yeah.
And I sometimes I kind of like appreciate it. I think I still, which is kind of weird. It makes me sad. Sometimes I'm like, I think this is brilliant. Why isn't anyone getting it?
Yeah, it's sort of dispiriting, isn't it? Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, fine, fair enough. I have to like, again, sometimes bin it. Sometimes I just have it written down, and then I don't know if you do this, but like every so often I go through my notebooks because I like to write on my my iPad, but I also like to write by hand. So I sometimes go through my notebook, through the pages, and like like I read your journal earlier.
That's very sweet. Yeah.
I would read back the jokes to see like, what was I thinking? 'Cause I date everything.
Oh, great.
So I'd go back to like, okay, so November last year, I
Yeah.
wrote that, I hate so and so. Like,
Yeah.
oh, this has happened to me. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
let's see let's see whether there is something in there. And then which I actually find funny that sometimes, because you see, coming back to what you were saying, and I don't want to sound big headed, but I do agree with the idea that it's easy to write something funny, but it's hard to remember. Like, it's hard to put an order on stage, especially for me. I struggle so much with my memory.
Yeah.
But then, so I would write down something, and then, which it's happened recently, where I did a new material night, and I did some old bits, killed it. I did some new bits very well, and then I did an old bit. No, an old bit. I did a bit that I found in a notebook, redid it, didn't go well.
Right.
And as I was on stage, I realized that I have tried that same bit numerous times last year, and he also didn't go well.
That's funny. Do you know what? That's funny, actually. Well, and I get this with other acts as well. I think it's funny sometimes when I'll be going through our notebooks and think, oh, that's a lovely idea. Yeah, I'll get that out of cold storage. I'll give that a run. And sometimes on stage, I remember, this is why it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I've always, because that's the thing. Sometimes I'll have done something. If I do it like I said, like 3 or 4 times, I will just ditch it, and I'll just ditch it. Like there's just no sense in trying to reanimate the corpse of that silly knob gag from 2019.
Yeah.
Let's just plow on. But yeah, sometimes it's such a long time ago, you forget that you've gone through that entire process. It's like, oh no, I already tried to get a mortgage with this lender. Oh no, they didn't like the fact that I had a criminal record. So yeah, that's silly to return. But no, it's really interesting to. Because sometimes a bit of material will read as exciting and new just because it's so old. And actually, and this is a funny thing I have with other acts, that people that I've been watching for ages, it always makes me laugh that sometimes an act that I've seen dozens of times over 10 years or something, they'll do a gag I've never heard before, and sometimes I'll say, oh, I really like that new one, that new one about Colombia or whatever, and the response is either, oh, thanks very much, that's new and I'm really proud of it, cheers, or it was, oh no, that's really old, that's so old you just have never heard it because I've retired it a long time ago.
Well, you see, funny enough that you said this, because it's a bit that I'm trying to work on, and I'm really struggling to make people understand why it's so funny.
Yeah.
And you kind of mention it in your. That's okay. You mentioned it in your joke, and in your story. And I'll try the bit now anyway, because and we get live feedback for it. But basically, because it's back on what you were saying, where sometimes and I think the reason why it clicked with me now is because sometimes someone gives you the feedback, and sometimes when there's a comedian giving you the feedback, if you don't have anything to congratulate, or like if you don't have anything that you remember from their set, then you downplay your own, where you're like, they're like, oh, this is brilliant, like, oh, this it's just a new thing I'm trying to, or you go like, oh, this it's so old, it's so far, it's the oldest thing I've ever, because I but then my comment, like my joke bit, which doesn't, it's so hard to make it work, but basically is that I always think of compliments like that, where sometimes people go, they look at me and they go like, oh, nice, oh, like your hair looked dapper today, like your hair looks really good, and then there is nothing that it's worth complimenting on them. And then I just go like,
slate to me.
Yeah, and I just go, oh, this I haven't watched in 2 days, and you're downsizing your own.
That's funny, yeah.
But you see, you're saying it's funny, but I tried it on stage so many times where I'm like, have you ever happened like you just like you kind of I scan them like up and down. God. I'm like
the
shoes.
Terminator.
Yeah, I'm like shoes, no, trousers, no, shirt,
That's
no,
great.
no, like this. No, great.
I like the idea that it's just like the ejector seat option. Like, okay, you've given me nothing, so I'm forced to say that haircut that I'm really proud of. It's just something I threw on. It's just that's amazing. I really like that, and I like how calculated it. I think it's always funny to have that weird concertinaing of time where you're spending like 50 seconds explaining what goes on in your brain in about 3/4 of a second. like you've scanned their entire body, the chemicals are fired. Oh no, this whole thing, don't worry. But actually, it's such a rich experience that you could spend 5 minutes explaining what's gone on. I think that's really good, and I think I find myself in that position. I know a lot of people that dress in a really pedestrian way, but then again, I don't look good enough to have to receive compliments all that often. So so it balances out. But yeah, that is. I like it. I'd love to. Because basically, it's always fascinating though talking with a comic about something that they're working on. That what I always end up thinking is I need to see it on stage because like for me that idea works great, brilliant. I would anticipate that it would work on stage, but you're telling me that it hasn't. Therefore, I'd be fascinated using that famous judgmentalness that I have to just process it. Oh, does it? Because I'd be looking at, does it jar with something that you said earlier that does make sense, or is there something? Is there one? Sometimes it's ridiculous. Sometimes I find this fascinating as well with anyone that speaks English with an accent. So that can be someone that's using English as a second language or just a regional accent. They find that it can be just the way they pronounce a particular word is just a bit confusing, and it's only a bit confusing, but you get less time for an audience to understand every single syllable than you do obviously in an ordinary conversation. And I find that fascinating that sometimes there'll be one, that, like in someone's accent that they're not sure if you're saying the word bean or the word bin. And that it really affects things. If you're already telling a joke and you're looking for something a bit silly and you're living in a slightly la land thing where things aren't totally as they seem, are you telling me that you've got a bean in your kitchen, or are you telling me you've got a bin in your kitchen? Because they're different things, and that affects how funny I'm going to find that following idea. And I find quite often that I'm amazed at how often that sort of things comes up, like we were saying about you can spotlight the particular moment when an act lost them or whatever, and it can be that simple of just they were confused by that word, so they didn't hear it properly, so that punchline didn't get much of a laugh, which made you as a performer shrink a little bit and be confused, which threw off your intro to the next gag, which is usually full of bravado and confidence, but because it's a gag about how cool and handsome I am. But I'm now going into that gag about being cool and handsome quite tentatively and nervously, which makes it look like an unpersuasive bit of material, and now the whole gig is on fire. I think it's absolutely fascinating that so often, and I think it's arguable that I obviously spend too much time focusing on the minutiae here, and basically you just want to be a funny, silly man, just rolling around for 20 minutes and being spontaneous and fun. But it is, I really am fascinated by those little sort of micro moments that can really turn a gig, good or bad. Something can really shift up a gear or shift down a gear because of how the audience have responded to a really minute thing, like you fiddling with your shirt at the wrong time, or missing a word or whatever. It's really, really interesting. And my solution to that is always just like have another short joke then, which will get them back on board quite quickly. I think so much of it. I think it's I want to keep people entertained, and so if they're not into the last thing, I want to be able to just parachute in a quick 10-second gag, which is silly and throwaway, which sort of gets us back on track.
But you see, I think, is this where practice makes... Because I know, for example, I sometimes am still struggling where I do a bit and it doesn't go how I want to. So even though, say, you have the set gag, which you're like, this is like your lifesaver, like this is one of those things that you're saying is quick to try to like get the audience back or to try and think about what's next. But, sometimes... Does it happen to you, or has it happened to you, and have you managed to kind of like overcome that where, you just go like blank, you're like, or do you always, you kind of like found, do you have a drawer in your head? No, because actually you did mention it about the coma thing where you're like, even if like you're in a coma, you wake up,
exactly.
You're like, I know this.
Yeah, exactly. I think I do. I don't. Yeah, I think I do. I'll always have something to go to. I think I don't. I never really drive particularly on stage. But then again, because when I MC, like I try to not do that, and I try to be, sincerely spontaneous and just more conversational and I try to when I MC, I don't try and rely on material too much, and so that really helps flex that muscle definitely. But I think it's rare that I'll sort of just draw a blank and not come up with something. Although, having said that, I don't know if that's a perfect answer either, because because I'm quite confident I will get something, I am quite happy to just stand on stage in just total silence for a few seconds whilst my brain sort of tees up a gag. It's a funny thing, isn't it? Like I'm confident that we will get back on track. Therefore, I'm happy to be totally awkward and silent for a few seconds before my brain sort of cues up the next gag.
Go on.
Yeah, and it's just interesting. So this is, I mean, if I live to be 100, I'll never find a sort of a perfect answer to that balance between sort of scripted and spontaneity, knowing that you want to have the confidence to know you can go on stage with absolutely nothing prepared and it will be fine, but you want to have enough respect for the audience to go on stage and know, oh, I've got 3 jokes that I think they'll definitely laugh, and the answer can be different on different nights, and sometimes you can do exactly the wrong thing and it can really pay off, and sometimes you can do exactly the right thing and it can go down in flames or whatever. And I do find that fascinating. It's just so hard to the answer is just experience, and the answer is just do it a lot and get better and be in more situation. That's why the big guys are the big guys.
I remember what you were saying about the silence thing. You're like, sometimes you're just comfortable being silent. I find myself at times I find comfort in that too.
Yeah.
However, once someone said to me, was like, oh, like basically I think I did like a 10 minutes, right? Which I was like very proud of, and I thought, oh, it went really well. And then the feedback from this person was like, you seem to be very comfortable in silence.
Oh, that's that's a bit like, I think it's great you don't really worry about your appearance.
Yes.
Oh, right. Oh, I thought I did. Oh, okay. That's amazing. Well, and it's fascinating, and that's why the feedback is invaluable, because so the one that I got was it was a similar thing actually, about taking my time and not being too quick. And I came off stage, and someone that I get on with and like and respect the opinion of just said, "Oh, were you nervous?" I was like, "No." Is that right, okay, cool. And it's fascinating to see what reads as nerves or what reads as confidence is different from being nerves or being confident, or what reads as anger might be different, on and off stage. It's funny that it's really and you have to be told that. I think you have to be told you don't look like you're some people can pause and it can look smug because it looks like they're enjoying the laughter of the audience so much. Some people can pause and look like they're on a different planet, and they're just confused. It's really interesting to know how your behaviour is interpreted by an audience. And I find it invaluable to have someone that I trust the opinion of, and obviously has seen you before, to be just like, oh, were you? So do you really hate rugby then? Because the way you were talking about rugby, oh no, I love rugby. Oh, really? Oh, okay. Oh, in that case, you need to approach that idea differently because it looks like you hate rugby or something. But yeah, that's really good. It's like comfortable in silence. Stick that on the poster. That's what.
But yeah, don't bother laughing. Just come in, sit down, and just relax.
You can have meditation's very big these days. You could just get them in, have a soothing couple of moments, and then maybe a couple of knob jokes at the end, just keep.
But I was talking about soothing voice, and I did get the feedback from a TV appearance thing that I've done, but I wrote down stuff, and I was like, oh, I want to come up with like funny ideas, and I did some like funny bits, and the feedback was that, oh, your voice is really soothing. And I was like, so from these like hours that I spent writing,
it's brutal, isn't it? Like,
it was nice. It was a very beautiful feedback from a very good actor.
Great.
I was like, it broke my heart a little bit.
Exactly. Well, exactly. It's just like, it is giving a kid, it is a kid, throwing away the present and playing with the wrapping paper, isn't it? It's like, I've spent 2 years making Colditz Castle out of matchsticks, and you've told me that you really like my shoelaces. Well, that's great, but actually, let's focus on this thing that I've poured, blood, sweat, and tears in. No, that's incredible. I remember someone once said of me that, coming off stage, they might have even led with they might have even given a compliment to someone else. It might have even been as bad as this. Like, you're in the green room and they say something like, "Oh, John, that was really funny. Ben, you got a nice voice for Radio 4." That's why I do it, baby. Yeah, great. Thanks very much. It's that is really. I love those green room sort of like what 1 second analyses things where it's just like funny, change your jumper. Funny. Like, it's really tough, those sorts of things.
Have you ever got any, like, have you ever got, like, feedback from an audience member?
Oh, yeah, quite, yeah.
What was
They're not backwards
your
in coming forwards.
Funniest, or like anything
good
that your
question.
most memorable?
Oh, that's a great question. So people quite often say nice things. Do you know what? They do directly impact my writing sometimes. I'm trying to remember. Sometimes, so this is the pronunciation thing I was talking about. Actually, this story will be about 15% as good without actually remembering the particular gag that they were commenting on at the time. But there's something about how I pronounced a particular word. They just thought I was saying something else, and so they were. I'm frustrated that I can't remember the exact gag, but they afterwards they said something like, "Oh, why did you have that? Why did you have that joke about Gaddafi?" And I was like, "I don't have a joke about Gaddafi." He was, "Oh no, I was like, "Oh no, that was Daffy Duck or whatever." Like, it was something. It's just absolutely brutal to think. Oh right, so that's not my genius being commented on. It's just I didn't say that word clearly enough, so they couldn't access the funny idea because I wasn't transmitting it clearly enough. It's really brutal. But yeah, so there's been nice moments like that when someone's just said, "I don't understand that joke about why is that funny?" And so I've rewritten it to stop that ambiguity. Or I just don't use that word anymore because it's confused. Yeah, I won't use the.
Interesting.
I'll, instead of automobile, I'll just say car because I say that's easier to understand or whatever. But yeah, I think there's always been I think the funniest ones are always sort of cusses wrapped up in a compliment. Yeah, exactly of the style of your comfortable in silence. I've had because I absolutely do have some really satisfying moments because I just love it. I don't have much of an ego about it. I'm always just pleased that another human being can see something in you that you've never seen before. Like, that's really. Oh, I thought I was being cool and tough, and you think I'm a tiny little cute bunny rabbit. That's funny. See you later. But yeah, I feel like I have to come back. I'm going to email you tomorrow with the most funny / harrowing feedback I've ever had from an audience member. Who knows? It might happen tonight. Who knows? But yes, it's it is. I really like. I mean, I like people just coming up to me on the bus and just talking nonsense to me. I'm really interested to hear just completely unbidden opinions from people, just blasting into your face. It's just funny. Like, okay. Let's chat then, man. This is obviously on your mind. This is obviously important to you. I'd be interested to know why this is important to you, and so let's share this train ride.
See, this is so interesting because I feel like I have such a clear switch where in one hand, and it goes back to what I was saying, I think even before we started recording about how, I used to hate contradictions.
Yeah.
And I remember at some point of my life where I was fighting a lot of things in my head, but I remember like when I would hear like someone going like, "Oh, I love this, but then I hate whatever," or like, "Oh, I'm a peaceful person, but then whatever." Anyway, and I just remember thinking, this is really, this is ridiculous. This is annoying. Da, da, da. And now I find people now I'm going to contradict myself, but I find people fascinating. Like any sort of, like, I feel like everyone can have at least one interesting thing that they are going to say. And then I'm like, you know what? It's either funny or it's like, it's worth listening,
Yeah, sure.
But I also, because you were talking about like the conversation in a bus or like conversation, especially with strangers. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's conversations with strangers.
There is building happening near.
I have a switch where I can go from like, "Oh my God, yeah, let's have a chat. Let's talk. Let me listen. I want to listen to you." And then I go to, "That's enough."
Yeah. No, I think it's like a 3 strikes and you're out policy, isn't it? It's
yeah.
Like, no, you've mentioned something that I'm not interested in 3 times in a row. Okay, see you later. Yeah, I think I agree. I think I probably have that with just humans in general. Just like, you've said 3 boring things in a row. I don't care how you got here. I don't care where you live. And I don't care where you got those trousers from. Be more interesting. See you later.
Or... I had this the other day, and I feel like now you're just listening to. But I had this thing. This guy told me. So he started having we had a good conversation about. I think it was just about him, because he was like, "Oh, I'm a banker, da da da." Like used to doing banking and stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. And then he told me some like interesting things about like the whole like housing crisis in England, and and he had some very good points. And I was like, oh my god, let me listen to this guy because he sounds fascinating. And then he goes like, and then for some fucking reason he just goes like, and this is why Albert Einstein was an atheist. And I was like, wait, what? What does that have to do with the housing crisis in London?
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, and because he loved Socrates, and Socrates was also an atheist. And you see, and then, but again, we at no point did we discuss religion, which is fine because again, I practice I practice religion, but I'm still kind of like, I don't know if there is a God, but anyway, I just like the sense of community, etc. Anyway. Yeah. So it's not that, because but I was just like, this is what happens sometimes where someone has a very good point, and I feel like this is where I feel bad, and like sometimes I judge people on like, oh, how can you listen to so and so on the internet? They are clearly stupid, or like they are clearly ridiculous. But then I'm like, but this person said so and so, and that's correct. They say two things that are correct, but then everything is incorrect. And I sometimes pride myself on being able to filter it. And I'm like, relevant, irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think in that way, it's like just keeping the two best tracks on an album and ditching the rest. It's just no one needs to listen to Elvis Costello's 9th album. Oh, but there's that one banger on side 2, which you wouldn't want to miss. I think it's totally possible to just. I suppose, just cherry pick the funnest, most interesting bits of conversation from a nutter, basically.
Yeah.
I can dismiss 95% of that, but I'm delighted I've heard your attitude about gardening, because otherwise, I'll remember that forever. But I think you are right, because it's babies and bathwaters a little bit, isn't it? I'd rather. I'm not particularly keen on sort of. Basically, if I trust you, you're in, and just you can, we can just have a fun time and just entertain each other and do whatever. And I'm not going to get too hung up about particular, like your voting preferences, or the fact that you're I don't know, you don't support the right charities or something. I think I'm happy just spending time with a fun guy who's entertaining. But because I think it's sort of too much to ask that someo's totally aligned with you.
I mean, I don't think it's even realistic, because otherwise, then what it means that I feel like it's too much the egocentristic. People are like, oh, you gotta be exactly like me, otherwise don't bother. But then in the other hand, you're like, but we want people to be different. I'm like, well, do you or do you not?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I'm fascinated by that. That coherence thing, but it's about not just like a pathological aversion to hypocrisy, like contradictions. You were saying, I think it's really, because obviously a contradiction, you need to. It's still, the contradiction almost will only exist in your brain, I suppose. You hear two things that you think clash, but obviously the person that holds those two opinions might not think they clash, and that might be because they haven't thought about them enough, or it might be because they just have a different conception of those ideas. It's interesting, because I'd be similar. I think I get frustrated when people are oh, how can you possibly say that film was really good because there was so much blood in it, and you said that film was really bad? Oh, it was just a gore fest. What load of rubbish. And I think that it's really interesting to try and unpick what constitutes an incoherence, like a hypocrisy thing.
Well, you see, and I don't know if you've used this, but I have a bit about, sometimes when I talk about my mom, which is like a whole set, and it's going really well, but sometimes I do mention that I grew up with her being like, I grew up in a religious household, but then at the same time while my mom was religious, she also loved, and she would watch astrology.
Oh, wow.
And then basically the thing is, to me, and I'm always wondering how people are not laughing at this, when you didn't either, but basically, because if you're religious, you shouldn't believe in astrology, because if you believe, because God is the only, because basically like your fate lies in the hand of the said Lord, God, whatever you believe in, or again, at least in like Christianity, Judaism, or like Islam, right? Because there is a said like God who has your fate, or like who's in charge of your fate, or like almost like directs your fate to an extent, yeah. And then you're like, oh, Mercury is in retrograde,
So I can't possibly go to church today.
yeah. Or like my mom would be like, I remember sometimes I would like have a fight with her, and she'd be like, "Oh, you're a Taurus," you know, like the whole like the horoscope lady this morning said, and nobody finds it funny, but to me, I'm like,
well, I suppose, if I wanted to mansplain to you how to make that funny, like if it's the priest saying that, it's like, you know, like, oh, went to confession and I was saying, Father, I have sinned, and then he says, "Oh, well, typical Taurus." Like there's a more implicit contradiction there, yeah, because they have the thing. Because it's funny, isn't it? Because I suppose that it's funny. I hadn't thought about that before. But if you're a priest, if you are if you're a representative of a religion rather than just a follower of religion, I suppose that it makes sense that you embody those traits and beliefs wholeheartedly, utterly. There is something funny about following a religion, that it's a bit contingent. It's a bit like following a football club. I could support Man City, or I could support Arsenal. I could be Christian, or I could be Jewish. Maybe like there's still.
yeah.
I mean, Levy, I've just been looking for a way to make thousands of people hate me all at once, and this is what I'm going to do. But yeah, it's funny. I was just unpacking why that's funny or not. Basically, and I think a priest is definitely into religion, whereas a religious person has only decided to be into religion. Maybe like and I say all of that just to get to this observation, which is, I quite often only figure out how I feel about something when it's in the form of a joke. Like so if something works, if something is funny, oh, that must mean that I implicitly believe X, because for that joke where the punchline is a doctor's made a mistake, and for that to be funny, I must implicitly believe that doctors are, authoritative and sensible usually. Otherwise, I wouldn't find that funny. And it's just interesting. I think that I find that interesting.
Seriously?
I think it's like, so like, I didn't know I had different opinions about religious people and priests until just now. But I think I realise I do now. That it just makes
you like
sense.
Hold them to a higher standard.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, they just have a different status, don't they? And because of how someone functions in a joke, I think is instructive into their identity, because people can only exist in sort of cartoon form in jokes, really.
Yeah.
And so you just need, he is strong, or she is powerful, or whatever. There'll be particular, because of the structure of a joke, you'll only have room to give one or two traits to an entity, whatever you're talking about. And but I'd be absolutely fascinated to hear, if you tried that on stage again, and it was, you were talking to a, I think just the sentence, talking about a priest who is into astrology, that is a funnier sentence than a Jewish person who is into astrology. Like it's a crisper sort of sillier idea. But I find that fascinating. That
I was even thinking now about your F1, your mate's F1 bit with the time, and then I thought, because like you hold people accountable, but in a different way. Like if a person it's into astrology, it's funny, and then I thought, like, why do F1 drivers need like car insurance? Because aren't they meant to be good drivers?
Yeah. That's really nice. Yeah. That should work. Yeah, exactly. I'll try that on stage tonight, Levy, and that's no feedback. Yeah.
There you go. Now I don't feel bad about taking.
Exactly. Yeah. No, this is a co-op now. Yeah. It's a good exchange. But I think that's just obviously, people cleverer than me have talked about this, but it is fascinating. Why is a particular word funny, and why is a particular word not?
Have you ever actually tried? Have you read that Sigmund Freud book about comedy?
I haven't. No.
Oh my God!
Freud on comedy.
Oh, it's so hard to read though. I tried it like twice.
Yeah.
And it's so fast. It's hard because
just give me a potted distillation of it in 10 seconds now, and that'll save me reading it.
It's
no, that's too big a challenge. But make the point you were going to make. Yeah, so Freud on comedy. Yeah.
No, that was it. I was just curious if you read it, because you're very you're such an again, you're like such a well not well written, but like you have like such impressive, the way you talk, the way you kind of like your thoughts, about like jokes and everything, and you're very well put. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
And then I was wondering if you read it, because in there he kind of like talks about the psychology behind comedy and why comedy is funny. Like why is basically it's about jokes, not necessarily about comedy, but it's about like why do people laugh at jokes?
Yes.
And I was wondering, because on the way you were kind of like explaining even yourself and everything, I was like, this sounds so strategic. Because like to me, it's like, I don't know, you farted and you're like, funny. While to you it's like, but why did you fart? But then how you have to be like right to the point, like what exactly happened? Okay, fine, moving on now. What did you do next? Did you burp? Did you burp as well?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And how exactly? It's almost like the how many pieces of this Jenga tower can we remove and still have it stand up? How many elements of this joke could we change and it would still be funny? And it's in doing that you realise which pieces of the joke are like load bearing. They're sort of crucial. Oh, you've got to be in Zambia, otherwise it's not funny. If you're anywhere else, it's not. And or you've got to have you've got to be wearing varifocals, not a monocle. But that brings us to like slapstick stuff and physical stuff, because obviously all my stuff is or a lot of my stuff is wordy, and it's easier to analyze words, I think, probably because you can just change a word and you can understand the different reaction it yields. But I think it's fascinating watching how effortless good clowns are at eliciting laughter and real joy from just pure physical. There's no information. There's no content. Just movement. It's something like a cast iron genius like Buster Keaton or someone like that, where you've got it must be something so pure and natural and perfectly funny, almost beyond analysis, because they're just so good at it, and it makes you so happy watching like a Charlie Chaplin pratfall or a Buster Keaton stunt or something that. I don't know. It leaves me sort of completely helpless, really, in a good way. I just think, oh, good, that's just the correct answer. Do that, and it's funny and it's perfect. There's almost nothing to tweak there.
I sometimes think that it's because it's a thing of expectations as well. Because I think if someone tries to do, like you said, like a physical, what was the word they used? I forgot.
Like clowning.
Like clowning, yeah. You kind of you. I think that the words require to be analyzed.
Yes.
While if you're like you make up as if like you're stumbling or like, for example, I was we were catching up on Drag Race yesterday.
Okay.
And there was this like drag queen we just pulled out of somewhere a hand puppet. Great. And she just started doing this with the hand puppet on a lip sync. And it was hilarious. Right. But that was it. Like it was, and now basically I'm just like pretending that my hand has a hand puppet. And it was funny just because you were like, what? While again, I think this is why I think the expectations are not lower, because it's to talk down on it. I think I agree. It's a wonderful art form, because like you said, you kind of like, it just has to be you, or like it has to be your persona, or like whatever you're trying to do. But again, I just think there are different.
They sort of draw their power from different places, don't they?
Yeah.
And it is, I'm always interested because, it's so much easier to analyse a sentence and break down the words and the delivery than it is to analyse a physical piece. Like
or a painting.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think that's I found that, I was having this discussion the other day, that it's, in analysing a painting, you've got to bring a lot more of yourself to it. So you need to interpret that inherent in explaining your feelings about that painting is your own emotional response to it. I think whereas if it's anything wordy, you can just talk about the words and the meaning that they express, and they could have chosen a different word, or I like those, I like that writing style, something like that. With painting, certainly anything that's a bit abstract, you have to sort of establish what it means to you for a kickoff. You have to sort of reflect your own emotional response of that painting first, and then say what you think about it. The sentence is going very badly now. I just realised, Levy. But yeah, it was a rewarding conversation I had the other day, that you can be one removed from in analysing words, and you can be absolutely fine and sort of keep yourself and your own sort of emotional response sort of insulated from the analysis. But with painting, you've just got to sort of get deep down and dirty about how it made you feel and what's going on and what do you think the painter was what response was he trying to elicit there? Usually he. It's just it's really interesting. Something that if you're not using words, then to analyse that art form, you have to reach for a more sort of emotional vocabulary, I think, which is more personal and sort of more sort of blood red. You know, there's more of your own character in the analysis of it. Clip that so it's just the last 10 seconds rather than the preceding 45 seconds, please.
Oh, that's absolutely fine. Don't worry. We're gonna before we wrap it up. I was gonna say, because I just remembered another thing that I tried, and I'm just gonna try it on you again. Where I basically, because we went to an art exhibition, and there is this like naked woman sitting on a pedestal
in real life.
Yes.
Okay, so a real naked woman.
Sitting on a pedestal, and then I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Interesting, you know, but it turns out the reason why she was like sitting there is because it was an exhibition about communism and about how communism makes you feel like naked, and you know, because you're like, you can't hide from anything, you can't hide from anyone, you're like all alone, and you're like watched all the time, and all your movement and everything. And then, but I remember like my thought was, sexy. But then the person that I went to the exhibition was like, wasn't that powerful? And I was like, why would it be powerful? And then the person explains to me, because she's representing how communism. And I was like, oh, I just forgot. Like,
I forgot I was at an art exhibition, and I was just looking at a hottie, and I thought the world is amazing. I love being alive.
Yeah, when you were talking about like paintings as well, because sometimes you see something and it's like, oh, this is the painter talking about like their pain and suffering, and you're like, this looks shit.
Well, exactly. You know? But I think that's a really good point. In that it's in order to. Sometimes it's the case of that. In order to smuggle through a good message, it has to be a bit beautiful. Like it's something that if something, it's too much to ask of an audience member to just see the message or just be persuaded by just a bald statement of the fact that, oh, I am sad. It is difficult living in communist Russia, whatever. It's just a funny, it's funny. That's almost going too far the other way. Yeah, you completely forget any message of any kind. Just like, love this. This is amazing. But yeah, it's sort of how much to sugar the pill, I suppose, isn't it? Like you don't want the pill to be just sugar, because then that's sugar. And you're not getting any good medicine out. It's I'll put that on a poster and sell that after my gigs. But yeah, I think that's really interesting, and so. It's almost too beguiling. You were enjoying you were enjoying the safety announcement so much you forgot where the fire exit was, and you burned to death. Yeah, that's amazing. And have you gone back? You know, I was so moved by that. By that exhibition, I've gone back every day to see.
No, I haven't. I haven't.
Really
and I think, because again, like it's a story I was trying to work out with, because I have a whole thing about how, you know, my parents grew up in communist Romania, and you kind of like live with like those scars growing up. Yeah. And my upstairs neighbor is a socialist.
Oh wow!
It's nothing wrong. It's just I find it strange. But anyway, I genuinely got scared by it. But anyway, So then I was trying to like work this whole thing out, and I was thinking about like art forms where like someone looks at the painting and you're like, oh, this is beautiful. And I remember, like going to the exhibition, which was a real exhibition, and you go and you see that person, and you're like, wow.
Yeah,
which again, I don't want to sound, but I'm not a weird guy. I think I'm not objectifying the person, the woman that was naked. It's just the fact that
I think it's fair to see a naked woman and have your first thought not be politics.
But also, you know, because I remember looking at those things about like communism, and I remember like some of the it sounds really terrible, but I was like, some uniforms, because it's the same thing with like Nazi uniforms.
Oh yeah,
very beautiful uniforms.
Magnificent, exactly.
And then the same with like communism, like the militia had beautiful uniforms, and I was like, this looks really good.
yeah.
But then you're also like, oh, but then what about like all the people that were killed because of it? And then you're like, oh yeah, that happened as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, where do you draw? Like, what do you think about?
But I think if I and my family were slaughtered, I'd like it to be done by someone that looked quite dapper.
Dapper.
I think that'd be my preference.
Well, oh God, Benjamin, it was such a pleasure, and I feel like we talked almost 2 hours, but I genuinely enjoyed it. It was incredible having you around.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for also being here while I was like going back through my experience and being electrocuted on stage.
Absolutely, yeah, absolute treat. Wouldn't have had it any other way.
I was trying to get the footage, but it didn't.
Oh no, way! That would have been amazing.
Yeah, because it didn't get through the 5 minutes. But anyway, that's another.
Comedian gets electrocuted on stage. Then guess what happens? Yeah.
Then I go to like live at the Apollo, but I have to like turn off the lights.
Yeah, I've got this bit where can I have a live wire on stage, please?
No, we only have candles. You go like a comedy club in like New York, like it's Jerry Seinfeld sort of. You know, like light on a candle on a table,
oh, exactly.
and then the spotlight on the comedian on stage, and they'll be like, "That's safe enough for this guy."
Yeah.
But yeah, Benjamin, such a pleasure. Where do time to plug? Where do people find you now? You're on social media.
Exactly, I'm blowing up social media. So I'm on Instagram as the real Benjamin Patterson, except no substitutes, and I'm blowing up the gram. And I gig all the time in London. Oh, I've got my first headlining my first gig ever at the OM on this Sunday, so that'll be nice. It's always nice to do sort of things for the first time, and having your name in 16-point font rather than 12-point font on the poster is always nice. But yeah, so Instagram, and I sort of advertise. I mean, in the early days of Instagram, but yeah, I stick my gigs on there. And yeah, give me a like, give me a subscribe. Enjoy yourself. Just come and see how. A man not very, very ill-suited to self-promotion navigates those choppy waters. And that'll be, you'll learn a great deal. But yeah, it's been so nice to be on, Levy. Thanks so much. It's been absolutely wonderful. And,
thank you.
Long
okay, well,
continue.
Hope everyone listening enjoys. Bye-bye.
All right.
Hey, it was good, right? I hope so. I mean, listening to it and putting it together reminded me of how much of a joy it is to speak with Benjamin. So that's it for now. You'll hear back on Thursday, I think. If not on Monday, we'll see. We'll see how the week goes. But yeah, until next time, stay skillful.